Welcome to Arms and Arguments. I'm your host, Nick Lewis. This is the episode titled America, the Enigma of Mystery Babylon, Biblical Prophecies and the Modern Parallels. Today I'll be delivering a straight, uninterrupted monologue exploring the compelling case that the United States of America fulfills the biblical prophecy Mystery Babylon as described in the book of Revelation and other scriptures. We'll draw directly from the Bible, particularly Revelation chapters 17 and 18, as well as supporting passages from Jeremiah and Isaiah, and incorporate insights from prophetic interpretations that link these ancient texts to contemporary America. This isn't about sensationalism. It's a reasoned examination of scriptural descriptions matched against the historical and current realities. Let's dive in. To understand Mystery Babylon, we must start with the source, the Bible itself. In the King James Version of Revelation 17, verse 1, it begins, "And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters." This great whore is a symbolic figure representing a powerful entity that influences the world through corruption and seduction. Verse 2 continues, "With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication." Here, fornication isn't literal but metaphorical for idolatry, alliances, and moral compromise. The entity sits on many waters, which verse 15 explains as people in multitudes, and nations and tongues, and indicting global reach and influence over diverse populations. Moving to verse 3, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." This beast ties into earlier prophecies in Revelation 13 and Daniel 7, representing a revived empire or coalition of powers. The woman rides it, suggesting she controls or is allied with the system initially. Verse 4 describes her opulence. "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication." This imagery evokes wealth, luxury, and spiritual pollution. Then verse 5 reveals her title, "And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth." The word mystery here is key. It's not a literal ancient Babylon, which fell centuries before John wrote Revelation around AD 95, but a symbolic future entity embodying the spirit of Babylon's pride, idolatry, and dominance. Ancient Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar was the pinnacle of human empire, as described in Daniel 4:30, where the king boasts, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by my might of my power and for the honor of my majesty?" But Mystery Babylon is its end times counterpart, a great city, as verse 18 states. "And the women which sawest and the woman which thou sawest is the great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth." In Greek, city or polis can mean state or nation, not just a municipality, fitting a superpower like America. Verse 6 adds a darker layer. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. This points to the persecution of believers, something America hasn't fully manifested yet, but could in prophetic future, especially given current trends towards secularism and hostility towards Christian values. The angel explains the mystery in verses 7 through 14, linking the beast to the 7 kings or empires, 5 fallen, perhaps Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, 1 current, Rome in John's time, and 1 future, the beast as an 8th. The 10 horns are the 10 kings who ally with the beast briefly, making war on the land, but ultimately fulfilling God's will by turning on the woman. In verse 16, and the 10 horns, making war on the land, but ultimately fulfilling God's will by turning on the woman. In verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and they shall make her desolate and naked, and eat, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. This destruction by her own allies suggests a betrayal by a coalition, perhaps a European or global alliance under the Antichrist, as some interpretations link to Daniel's 2 toes of iron and clay. America as the current hegemon. America fits this dominating now but potentially abandoned or attacked by rising powers. Chapter 18 shifts to her fall, verse 1 and 2. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having a great power. And the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The repetition of fallen echoes Isaiah 21:9 about ancient Babylon, but here it's prophetic. Verse 3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornications with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. This highlights economic dominance, nations enriched by her trade, mirroring America's role as the world's largest economy, exporter of goods, and enforcer of global trade via the dollar standard. A heavenly voice in verse 4 calls, come out of her, my people, that ye not be partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues, This warns believers to separate from her system, reminiscent of Lot fleeing Sodom or the Israelites leaving Egypt. Verses 5 through 8 describe her sins piling to heaven, her self-glorification. I said a queen and am no I said a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow and sudden destruction. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. Jeremiah 50:17 through 18 speaks of Israel scattered by lions, Assyria, Babylon, then God punishing them. Some see America as the daughter of Babylon. A new iteration, Isaiah 47:5 through 7, describes a lady of kingdoms who says, I shall be a lady forever, abusing Israel, fitting America's complex relationship with Israel ally, but sometimes pressuring. Prophetic interpretations like those in the coming economic collapse of Mystery Babylon or teachings by Irvin Baxter and others argue America matches uniquely. No other nation has the global cultural export of movies, music, and lifestyles promoting hedonism, materialism, and rebellion against God. Hollywood Hollywood as the abominations cup spreading fortification worldwide. America's pharmaceutical industry, Pharmaca, leads in drugs, legal and illegal, deceiving nations. So why not Rome or the Vatican? Revelation 17:9. Seven hills fit Rome, but the woman rides the beast, separate yet allied. Rome lacks economical dominance like verse 18 requires. Rebuilt Iraq, Babylon? Unlikely, as Jeremiah 51:26 says it won't be rebuilt. Saudi Arabia or EU, they don't match the wealth, cultural, or hammer roll, which we'll dive into deeper. We begin with one of the most long-standing interpretations, Mystery Babylon as the ancient Rome, or modern ecclesiastical successor, the Vatican, in the Roman Catholic Church. This view dates back to the Reformation era, where the Protestant reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin identified the papacy with the Antichrist system in Babylon as the corrupt church hierarchy. Biblically, Revelation 17:9 describes the woman sitting on seven hills, which aligns with Rome's famous seven hills. In 1 Peter 5:13, the apostle writes, the church that is Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, widely seen as a code for Rome to avoid Roman persecution. Babylon symbolized oppressive empires in Jewish thought. The woman's attire in purple and scarlet mirrors papal vestments, and her golden cup of abomination evokes alleged doctrinal corruptions like transubstantiationism or indulgences. Verse 6's drunkenness with the blood of the saints points to historical events like the Inquisition, where millions of Protestants and Jews and others were martyred. Revelation 18's economic laminate fits Rome's historical trade dominance. Though critics argue modern Rome lacks the global merchant enrichment described, proponents extend this to the Vatican as a city-state reigning over kings through the spiritual influence, with the European Union as a revived empire under its sway. However, this theory is often critiqued as anti-Catholic bias, and Revelation's future-oriented language may not fit a solely historical Rome. Another prominent alternative is Jerusalem, particularly apostate Israel, or the city itself in end times. This interpretation draws from the Old Testament prophecies where Jerusalem is called a harlot for its idolatry and unfaithfulness to God. In Ezekiel 16:15, God says to Jerusalem, "But thou didst trust in thine own beauty, and playedst the harlot because of thy renown, and pouredst out thy fornications on everyone that passed by." Similarly, Ezekiel 23 depicts Samaria and Jerusalem as sisters Ohala and Oholibah, who committed whoredoms with Assyria and Babylon. Jesus himself in Matthew 23:37 laments, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee," echoing Revelations 18:24's blood of prophets and saints found in her. Advocates argue Jerusalem sits on seven hills, and as a spiritual center, it could reign over the kings of the earth through the end times alliances or deception. The destruction in 1 hour might refer to a nuclear strike or divine judgment during the tribulation, with merchants mourning the loss of the great city tied to its role in global finance or tourism. This view gains preterist This gains traction among preterists who see the partial fulfillment in AD 70's destruction, but futurists link it to a rebuilt temple, the abomination of desolation, weaknesses, including Jerusalem's lack of current maritime trade emphasis, and its portrayal as a victim in other prophecies, not the oppressor. A literalist approach identifies Mystery Babylon as a rebuilt city in Babylon, in modern Iraq. This theory that ancient Babylon will be reconstructed as a global economic and political hub during the end times, fulfilling prophecies like Zechariah 5:5-11, where wickedness is carried to Shinar to build a house for it. Saddam Hussein began rebuilding efforts in the 80s, and some see ongoing developments in the region as precursors. Revelation's descriptions of wealth, trade lists including slaves and souls of men, and sudden fiery destruction aligned with Middle Eastern oil-rich metropolises vulnerable to attack. However, Jeremiah 50:39-40 and Jeremiah 51:26-29 declare Babylon will never be inhabited again, becoming like Sodom and Gomorrah, desolate forever, which challenges a future rebuilding. Isaiah 13:19-22 reinforces this perpetual ruin, leading many to view this as a symbolic rather than literal. Proponents counter the prophecies have dual fulfillment, with never again applying only to its ancient form. Islamic interpretations. Some theorists propose Mecca or Saudi Arabia as Mystery Babylon, emphasizing its role in global spiritual deception through Islam. Mecca is a center of pilgrimage, with the Kaaba potentially symbolizing the golden cup of abomination. The nation's vast oil wealth enriches merchants worldwide, and its and its 7 mountains could refer to the hills surrounding the city. Beheadings for faith mirror Sharia law practices, and the blood of saints fits historical and ongoing persecution of Christians in the region. The woman riding the beast might represent Islam's alliance with a revived Ottoman or Caliphate state. Critics note Mecca lacks the 7 heads and 10 horns political structure and doesn't fully match the maritime trade focus as it's landlocked. This view often intersects with theories of Antichrist as Mahdi, but is dismissed by those seeing Babylon as Western or Judeo-Christian apostasy. The European Union or revived Roman Empire is proposed as a collective entity building on Daniel 2's feet of iron and clay, representing a divided yet strong end times kingdom. Babylon here is symbolic of the EU's Babylonian roots through its parliament's building, modeled after the Tower of Babel, and its economic powerhouse status. The woman could represent a unified false religion or secular humanism dominating Europe. Strengths include the 10 horns as member states. The strengths include the 10 horns as member states allying with the beast and betrayal in Revelation 17:16, fitting internal EU fractures, but the EU lacks the singular great city focus and blood guilt emphasis. So historically, America's founding had Masonic influences, with symbols like the eye on the dollar bill evoking Babylonian occultism, the Statue of Liberty inspired by Roman Libertas, but echoing Babylonian Ishtar, goddess of freedom and harlotry. New York City, often called modern Babylon, as the financial hub where merchants trade souls. Current events bolster this. America's debt-fueled economy, moral decay, legalized same-sex marriage, transgender agendas, rampant pornography, which the U.S. produces 90% worldwide, exported via internet, military bases in 80 countries influencing kings, yet vulnerabilities, reliance on foreign oil, fraying alliances with Europe and China on the rise. Prophecies suggest destruction by fire in 1 hour, which could happen perhaps through EMPs or nukes from the Ten Horn Coalition. America's Christian heritage turned apostate fits the mother of harlots, birthing false doctrines, prosperity gospel, secular humanism. Revelation 14:8 announces her fall early in tribulation, paving the way for the Antichrist. What are the implications? If true, believers heed come out of her separate from worldly systems, prepare spiritually, not in anti-American ways, but in prophecy recognition ways. As Jeremiah 51:9 says, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her. This view is substantiated by Scripture, and observations suggest we're in prophetic times. America is blessed, but it is very corrupt, and judgment may be coming soon. Study, pray, and align with the Lamb. Thanks for listening. See you next time.